Okay. Right. Well, welcome everyone to our fourth London Animation Club TV broadcast. Shouldn't I be talking yet, Tom? Oh, right. Okay. Slight hiccup there. Welcome to the fourth London Animation Club TV broadcast. It seems a long time ago and in another life, that we used to have live shows at the Green Man in Fitzrovia. In order to make you feel nostalgic for those days, I've got a poster of it on the back wall behind me to make you all remember the old days. Perhaps you can see yourself somewhere in that photograph. Now, since last week, we've had some advances in technology. Tom, I can hear myself in the background. I'm echoing. Oh, no, I'm. Okay, I'll try with headphones instead. Sorry, ladies and gentlemen. Yeah, it seems a crazily long time ago since we were actually a live event at the Green Man in Fitzrovia. Well, this is our fourth broadcast now, and as ever, we are looked over by we are in the capable hands of London Animation Club Technical Director Tom Lowe, and this is our first broadcast on YouTube, so thank you all for joining us. If you want to leave comments and questions for Linda, please leave them underneath the video window here rather than on Facebook. So as you see, we're taking incremental technological steps from event to event. Back in the old days, we used to meet about once a month, usually the first Monday of the month. Now we've actually upped the rate to about two adventures per month. So, and I'm hoping that gradually we will be able to move not just nationally, but internationally. Our special guest tonight I'm delighted to introduce Linda McCarthy, whom I first met in 2013 at the Annecy International Animation Festival. Linda was there with her cousin Steven Appleby, who was amazingly dressed with black hair, sunglasses, looked like an amazing goth. And can we? I'm sorry. My children are making quite a lot of noise. Guys, sorry, can you keep it down? Sorry, there's as you see, I'm keeping it real. This is the world of lockdown. Oh, bless you all. I love you. Okay, great. Yes, so it was clear that the three of us weren't very good at the French summer, and so I think we all gravitated together. And shortly afterwards, well, a while afterwards, Stephen and Linda joined us at London Animation Club. Linda is a remarkable animator coming from a background in ceramic design and sculpture, who moved into animation somewhat late in life, and has produced remarkable work, distinctive for its own particular sense of humour and sensibility. And a number of your works have been collaborations with your cousin, Steven Appleby, but you've produced a lot of work independently of him. And I just wanted to show before we proceed, this is a marvellous, can you see it at all? No. Well, I'm actually holding up a copy of Dragman by Steven Appleby, but it's not showing up terribly well. So, in a way, these transmissions are the fulfillment of something I've been interested in doing for a very long time, which is actually producing. Actually visiting animators in their own studios to see how they work, have actually see a rather different view of them as animators. Sorry, I can hear it's just kicking off in the background here. I'm really, really sorry, ladies and gentlemen, but as I say, this is life in lockdown. an opportunity for me, as it were, to visit them in their workspace and actually find out much more about their working practice. And this is something I rarely have the privilege of doing. So I hope that this is not just a replacement for a live event, but actually a step in a particular direction as well. So, Linda, I believe you are currently in Cheshire. Would this be correct?
That is correct, yes. Indeed. In a small village called Sorgel.
Okay. And, right, I'm still having a certain amount of audio bleed from somewhere, so I'm just going to... okay, I found it. It's gone now. So, yes, can you tell me the name of the village?
Well, it's Soghall.
Soghall.
Yes, near Chester, 3 miles out of Chester.
Okay. And do you want to just say a little bit about your earlier work in ceramics?
Well, it was many lives ago. I did ceramics. I went and did a foundation course in Bradford, and then decided that I liked the ceramics and that it might be something I could do when I had a family at home. They would play happily while I made pots, but of course it didn't happen that way. But I got a good few years in before they came along, and produced some work. Some of it sold at the Blue Coat in Liverpool. But, in the end, I grew frustrated with making throneware, so I moved on to sculpture, did clay life models, all that sort of thing. But I was always into puppetry. So when I went back and decided to do an animation course at a further education college, I gravitated towards stop motion, obviously, and then the ceramics just poked its way in, really.
Did you ever feel tempted by 2D hand-drawn work?
I tried it when I was at college. I went to, it was Glyndŵr University. It was called NUI in those days. And I did all the disciplines in animation. But the stop motion was what excited me. There was no other way, really. I'm not a very good drawer, so, yeah, but whereas I like to make things. Yeah.
Now, do you want to say a little bit about your relationship with Steven Appleby and how your collaboration came about?
Well, Steve and I are cousins, so we've known each other since babies, and I can remember doing puppet shows with him up in Northumberland at the old vicarage where he lived, and we went there for summer holidays. Our mothers were sisters, and we made puppets then. We were about 7 or 8, so we've known each other a long time. So when I had to choose to make a graduation film, I suggested to Steve it would be lovely to animate some of his cartoons. And he said, yes, of course, what would you like to do? And Small Birds Singing had always been one of my favourite of his cartoon strips. And it hadn't, at that point, it hadn't been made into a book or anything, so there was no problem with treading on somebody else's toes. So, yeah, we worked on, he helped obviously a lot in the transformation from 2D to 3D, and is always the artistic advisor. I do something and check that he's happy, and yeah, we have a great time. Great fun.
Now, I'm always aware about your command of space, which I find remarkable. I think of films like Mother's Song in particular, but you have a very beautiful three-dimensional sense. I almost can't imagine where the set stops. Now, what was it like trying to translate flat images into 3 dimensions, not just the figures themselves, but the surrounding space?
Well, it did develop. The first tiny steps were experimental, and in fact, that was at the point of trying to make the characters that I decided to use ceramics with the help of our technician Dave, who was very encouraging. And I made a head out of foam latex, and it was horrible. And I made ceramics, and it just looked great. So it's not the best decision for an animator, because when they bend over, the head is very heavy. So I exchanged the heads for different expressions, and it just kind of developed.
Again, an unexpected choice, but you've rather made it your own. And I think the fact that you can see the material, it isn't pretending to be something it isn't. I always find very witty and engaging, and so on. Now, you inject a sense of humor and a sensibility very much of your own as well in this collaboration. Can you say a little bit? What is your worldview? Where's all this coming from?
I don't know. I suppose things like Nightmare Before Christmas was one of my very favourite films. So I loved that sort of gothic look and slight darkness, and Steve's sense of humour, of course. I always loved his cartoons, and it's just playing. It's just fun. It just comes. I remember when Lord of the Rings came out, going to see that and being bowled away by all that, and I kind of wanted to get involved somehow in a tiny way. So making scenes, making films, it's realised that ambition, really.
So now, in virtual space, I find myself. Are we in your studio at the moment, or where are we? It looks like an office space with CDs on the wall.
If you look round the other side, it's full of toys which belong to the grandchildren. But this little corner is where I do my editing, so I bring. The other bit you'll see in a minute. There's no Wi-Fi over there, so I couldn't be across there in amongst the mess. But this is a nice space, and I'm lucky to have that much space, really.
So is that part of the experience of living outside of London or a metropolis, the fact that you do have additional space? Or what's your experience of working in a large, I don't even know what the space is around. I always imagine you living on a moorside or something like that, with kind of fields around you. Maybe I'm getting a picture from the small bird singing animation, but it must be pleasant to have your workspace so near.
It is pleasant, of course it's pleasant. It wasn't always a workspace when I have 4 children, and I had to kind of wait till they moved on to take over the space, which was a toy room, playroom. Then it went on to be a party room and drum studio and all sorts. But once they all moved on, I turned it into a film studio. But then we had a shed made, and so that we could move the bicycles and the gardening stuff out to that, and I could take over the garage as well, really. And now I've taken over this room, so as they've moved on, I've moved in. It's
a gradual evolution. Now, do you want to tell us a little bit about the things you're going to be screening tonight?
Okay, well, the first one's just a little tour of the studio and the workshop, just to put you in the picture, generate some questions maybe. Then we're going to see a traditional Christmas at Small Bird Singing, which was the first film I made at that in the studio. The one that will play at the end, the original Small Bird Singing, was made at college. It's not, but once we got into the studio, I was able to go into high definition, get a proper camera, and and then we'll see Hinterland, which is another short Small Bird Singing film. And
something that I'm always quite passionate about is the opportunity for filmmakers to try to show work in progress and to get feedback, and also because I'm kind of nosy and I like to know what other people are up to. So the work in progress is Mrs. Bobbin. Is that right?
The progress is called Bob Bobbin and the Christmas Stocking.
Bob Bobbin and the Christmas Stocking.
Yeah, and it's really a story about greed. Spandersman is the central character, and Bob Bobbin, the giant child. So it started off as a 5-minute film, and it's now on 11 minutes. So
oh my God,
got a bit carried away, and it started 4 years ago. So I'm nearing the end now.
Right. Oh, well, I look forward to seeing that. Well, so do you want to say a little bit about the first film, the studio tour?
Well, it's probably I'm going to wince and be excruciatingly embarrassed by it. But
you're saying this to someone who has just in a live broadcast had his son screaming outside on the hall. I had echo coming through. I had a kind of audio bleed through from a web page I accidentally left open. So I was going like this and like this and like this and like this, forgetting where I was, desperately looking at my notes and feeling very, very foolish. And you're saying you're nervous about a film which you had at least some control over the making of. So
yes,
I'm sure.
The first time I filmed it, it went on for about 20 minutes. So then I cut it down to 9. So
okay. Well, let's without further ado, let's go for that, Tom.
Thanks. Okay, this is my workshop area for building sets, working on armatures. There's my kiln. Lots of props in storage, and you can see I've been rooting around looking for things. Sets and old moulds which may be needed again. My foam latex oven. That's the pointy attic from the outside. Foliage for sets. There's the front of house with the family emblem on the front. There's sleeping Bob Bobbin, who's main character in the forthcoming film. And the shed from Mother's Song. The gazebo. Front steps. Okay, and upstairs is the puppet making and ceramics part. I'll just go up there. Okay, upstairs, and this is my sink area. This is the red iron oxide that I paint on bisque fired heads, sponge it off and then fire them again to 1240 to 1260 to create the effect that I have on all the characters' heads. This is my wheel under here. There we go. For throwing tiny tea sets. Here's all my fabric. Tend to collect everything. That's a problem with stop motion animators. They hate to throw anything out because it could be useful. Lots of boxes for storing heads. There, I make many heads for each character with different expressions. There we go. That's Mother from Mother's Song, and her son. Those are made in plaster moulds, and then I manipulate the mouths. Lots more moulds, bits and bobs that have nowhere else to live. Oh, all the heads. The genius behind Small Birds Singing, Steven Appleby. These were made for an exhibition that Stephen was having in Edinburgh, and also for the opening sequence was included in the ident for Bradford Animation Festival 2011. Lots more bits and pieces. Wire. Another little kiln down here, which is great because it fires quickly and it's not as expensive as the one downstairs. This is the best aspect for sitting and working, the best light. I've been making some replacement hands for Spandisman, who's been very active in the final scenes of the current film, and the hands always get broken, the fingers particularly. I make those in moulds too. I was taught by the wonderful McKinnon and Saunders how to make hands. They provided 5 of my armatures. There's the silicone, there's the catalyst, and the result is a little hand, all dappled with, coloured with dots of silicone, different in browns and blacks, so they'll match the heads, which are ceramic, of course. Right, I think we should go down and see the film studio. Here we are. Let's pull the curtain back. Right. This is one of the final scenes in the current film. I have 2 or 3 I've got to go back and do, which are earlier, but I'm very close to the end now, after 4 years. This is my Canon 7D. And this is Spandisman. Lots of heads, get different expressions, and sometimes if I can't get the right head or it doesn't look right, I'll come back out and take a couple more shots and then use Photoshop and superimpose the different mouth shape over what's there. Around the back. I can get a good depth for the distant shots with hills, etc. Nice turquoise sky in the background. At the moment I'm using Stop Motion Pro, but I do have Dragon Frame and I'm going to have a bit of a go with that in the next film. Okay, I've turned the house lights off so you can see how the set is lit. Joe Dembinski does the lighting for me. Joe started with camera and lighting at Stop Frame Films and Cosgrove Hall in Manchester,
And he moved on to be one of the directors at Hot Animation. So he is an expert. And his lighting brings alive my characters and adds great atmosphere to the sets. There we go, through the skylight. So this is Christmas morning, and I can't tell you any more because I don't want to ruin the surprise. I think that's enough for now.
Well, as I say, now I feel I have experienced the studio. I was just thinking that I'm very envious by the amount of space you have. It is like a real studio, which is exactly what it is. Now, Tom tells me that Kate Jessup and Dennis Isterson have joined us, so lovely to hear from you. Clearly you do have. Yeah, you're blessed with a marvelous amount of space. Has it informed your work? The fact that you can have more room to move.
Well, you might have noticed from the images that I've filled it up. I think you have a nice space and you just accumulate stuff to fit the space, really. So I do get frustrated that I have to clear a space before I can get on with work. It's very easy to mess it all up, but before I start the next film, I'm going to have a massive tidy.
And do your puppets go into cold storage, or do you ever pass them on to, I don't know, friends, or
No, they usually get moved. I turn them into other puppets, redress them, change the heads, and they take on a new character.
A new aspect. Okay. Well, it was lovely to see all those heads of Stephen in the middle there. So do you want to tell us about the next film that we're going to see?
This is, as I say, was the first one we made in the studio, a traditional Christmas at Small Bird Singing. And it is typical of Steve's humour with the, I shouldn't say any more, but you've probably all seen it. It's a very unlikely ending, and it takes us by surprise. It actually was taken up by Shorts International. It was on iPlayer for 3 years, but because it was a Christmas film, it was only ever bought by TV companies at Christmas time, and because it was only 3 minutes long, it didn't really make a lot of money. It was shown in Turkey and a few other places, but it was nice to have one taken up like that.
And what year was the film made?
I think that was maybe 2010.
It's still very good to have television sales.
It doesn't. It was taken up, I suppose, probably a couple of years after it was made, and it had a run for about 3 years, and then that was it.
Okay. Now, Dennis has asked, what vicarage was that?
In Wooler, in Northumberland. Okay. That was where it was called the Old Vicarage, and that's where Stephen's family lived, and we would go for holidays. It was a great rambling place, which I think kind of helped to make the place place in Small Bird Singing, we had great holidays there.
Well, Dennis, if you have another story about the vicarage, maybe you'll put that in as a comment. I wondered if you asked about that vicarage for a particular reason.
I think it's care home now. Sorry.
It's a what?
I think it's care home now.
Oh, right.
I think.
Yeah. There's something oddly apt about that. I'm not quite sure why, but something to do with the dark sense of humour of Small Bird Singing, perhaps. I don't know. Okay, so Tom, shall we watch the first film?
Excuse me, passing stranger, sir. Could you spare a moment?
Yes.
According to ancient tradition, the Christmas decorations at Small Bird Singing are carried down from the pointy attic with the help of a passing stranger.
Lucky I happened to be passing.
Got it, sir?
Lucky I happened to be passing.
Next day it is written that the stranger must fetch and decorate 3 trees, 1 for the comfy sitting room, 1 for the great sitting room, and 1 for the stranger's sitting room.
Will there be anything else? I must be going.
Perhaps another bauble, sir. On Christmas Eve, the stranger is required to pour brandy into the Christmas pudding and sing carols as the potatoes are peeled.
Please, can I go now? I have a wife and children.
Finally, along with a glass of sherry and a mince pie, the stranger is locked in the Christmas bedroom as a sacrificial offering to Santa Claus.
Help! Let me out! I need to get home for Christmas! Ho ho! Ho ho ho! Ho ho ho!
Happy Christmas and a preposterous New Year.
Well, Tom, you were saying that we've heard back from Dennis. Do you want to read it? Tell me what his comment is. He says, I no doubt passed you at some point because his grandparents lived somewhere near Wooler. So it's a small world in animation. If anyone's wondering what the picture is behind me, it is actually the last photograph I ever took at the Green Man, our old venue, back in March, I think. So this is after the refit. So it looks completely different for anyone who wasn't at that particular event. So we've joined by someone, Linda. Who is this? This is somebody I recognise.
Oh, this is Hurtle, the butler.
Yeah, I hope he's going to behave himself.
Yes, he's kind of the one in charge, really. Never, always calm, but yeah, he's great.
And what's the situation?
Sorry, I was going to say about the mask suggestion that he works for the Society of Masked Butlers.
What's the situation with Small Birds Singing at the moment?
Well, the one that I'm doing at the moment is, as I say, is a Small Bird Singing.
I hadn't realised.
Yes, okay. Bob Bobbin. So we'll talk about that in a minute. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I have another question planned about Small Birds Singing. So the next film, Hinterland, do you want to tell us a bit about that?
Well, that was just a very relevant film about recycling and it had a run at the festivals. It was taken up by some festivals that were looking for films with a conscience about climate, etc., which was nice. And it also got some funding from the Creative England. Before that was Creative England. So just a little bit for post-production, which was nice. And yeah, it's nice and short, 2 minutes long. So enjoy.
Okay, Tom.
Ah, missed.
Ouch!
Plastic bottles everywhere.
Disgusting.
Ew.
It's like living on a rubbish tip. Ah!
I bet there wasn't this much pollution when Small Birds Singing was built.
True. Old Hinterland chose this spot for its beauty.
How did Hinterland make his money?
We never talk about it.
It was probably an arms manufacturer.
Oh no, far worse than that. He invented unrecyclable plastic.
I expect these bottles must degrade one day.
It's my turn.
Is not.
Hinterland's plastic is stubborn stuff. I'll journey into the future and take a look.
Well, off you go then.
I've just been, and now I'm back. I went forward 1 billion years, and the bad news is that the bottles are still there.
And the good news?
The good news is, it doesn't matter, because the Earth is gone.
Okay, well, Emma Calder has just joined us, so lovely to hear from you, Emma. Well, it's nice to see the Small Birds Singing dark sense of humour working for a positive end. Do you want to tell us a little bit more about that?
Well, it came from 2 cartoon strips. When I started, I think we had about 400 cartoon strips to look at and I'd choose. But this was just 2 strips that summed it up, and it was just a nice little rounded story. Technically, I struggled a bit to get the bottles. I tried resin, tried all sorts of techniques, and ended up making them out of ceramics. So with a sort of soft glaze, I thought, well, they look like plastic. They look like the sort of dense plastic. And then, of course, the twist that at the end, when he goes back in time, we had various sort of thoughts about how he could walk into a shed and come out again. But in the end, we just followed the strip. And when he said, I've been and now I'm back, and, that got the best laugh of all, really. It's totally understated. So, yeah, it was fun.
Looks it. Okay, so we're now going to see a short clip of the work in progress, Mrs. Bobbin. Do you want to tell us a bit more about that?
It was quite difficult to choose a little bit of the film that didn't spoil it, really. But I've always wanted to do a bit of knitting in a film. And, being a knitter myself, I looked at lots of other films to see how they knitted, including Pingu was always a favourite. And everybody does it slightly different way, So that was good fun. the film, or are we just talking about that particular little bit?
Oh no, I meant the Bob Bobbin and the Christmas stocking.
Well, yes, I've got some storyboards here.
Excellent.
I'll have to move Hurtle here because he's away. And so let me see if you can see it. I thought, well, I may as well make another Christmas film. So this is, now, can we see this?
Oh, yes.
So we start, this was just the idea that sparked it. And it was just taking down the decorations. The idea is that if something's left behind, then it's a calamity, and thunder and lightning strikes. So, and I love the bit about Consomme chopping the Christmas tree down, get rid of it, and then them fighting over the balloons. So that comes across in the film. But then, on a different note, there was another strip that I particularly liked of Stephen, which was, there we go, this is the one of the giant. And basically, he ate his mother and father out of house and home because he was so big. So they had to live in his ear. And, actually, in the strips, it says, well, did they not fight? And he says, no, they had one ear each. So it nearly broke their marriage. So there was a challenge in this, and I can actually show you. I do have the ear here because I had to make a giant ear for Mr. Bobbin to climb out of. So this is ceramic. It took me about a week. I thought, well, I can just make that quite easily. So it had to have a hole for Mr. Bobbin.
Do you mind holding it up and looking through the hole? That would make a great shot. That's it.
Yes.
I'm doing screenshots as we go. Beautiful.
And then we've got Mr. Bobbin here behind me, who ended up being extra tiny. So he had to be small enough to get through the ear hole. And I think we could just about see it through. There we go.
Oh, yeah.
So
good photo opportunity. Yeah.
There was lots of challenges. I like a challenge. I like to do something that's interesting, and that I haven't done before. And Mrs. Bobbin is huge. She's kind of stuck to the back with a magnet. I'll just detach her. So she's quite a lot bigger than Mr. Bobbin, and that just became apparent because he had to fit through the ear hole. But actually, it's quite amusing that he's so small and she's so big. And this
it's beautiful.
This character is actually, if you remember Mother's song, this was Mother's armature.
Oh, right.
So with a bit of stuffing and a different head. So I can reuse the bodies, which is great. Mrs. Bobbin has lots of heads, and her hair detaches. It's made of wire wool. So I've got a cork in there, and it fits into the back. And that means that each head looks much the same. So, and this is her extreme knitting face. So you'll see that in the tiny clip.
Sure. It looks so much fun. I mean, I'm a hand-drawn animator. I've never done 3D stop motion with puppets and so on. It just, absolutely wonderful. I now have this picture of your studio with all these characters actually living in it and walking around you and so on.
Yes, and so in here we have one of the shots of the knitting. So that's what I was going on.
Oh yeah.
See that? And yeah. So you'll see. So he comes in here. Oh, yeah, that one there.
Oh, wonderful.
So Spannersman is auditioning for knitters. Again, I can't tell you why.
No, okay, we'll keep it as a secret. Okay, Tom, run VT, I think.
Professional knitters are interviewed and tested for speed.
Ready, steady, go. Three, two, one, stop. Thank you, Mrs. Bobbin. I'll be in touch. Next.
God, I look like a pig. Maybe I'll put the glasses back on. I'm live now, am I? Oh, right. Okay. I was just saying to Tom that I look like a pig on the broadcast. How do you think your practice, particularly on small bird singing, has evolved over time? You've been producing them for quite a few years. Have you felt that the sensibility has changed, or your craft, or how does it feel?
Feels good. I think it was quite nice to do a couple of different ones. There was Mother's Song, which was the music video, and then I did felt animation with an artist who was a felt maker and songwriter, and that was fun. That was different. But then I gravitated back to small bird singing because I missed it, really. I missed sort of working with Steve, and this is where what I enjoy most, really.
I hope you'll forgive the pun, but there's a common thread of craft in knitting, felt, and ceramics, and so on. Do you feel that there's another material waiting for you that you might want to explore in the future?
Well, I've tried felting myself. In fact, behind me I have a prop that was in this film, and these are.
Oh.
I made this one first, but that one was too big, so I made a smaller one. And that fit into a tiny stocking. So
that's adorable.
It doesn't have the same magic as, for me, as clay.
So. No. Have you thought of using unfired damp clay the way Jan Švankmajer might, actually sculpting it away, as part of the animation?
I have done, but that's kind of been done before, hasn't it?
Well, yes, but not with your sensibility.
I do use clay. I use the clay to make the molds and stuff, but no, there isn't enough time in the day to be able to just go off and do something new. Kind of feel I'm on a roll.
Yeah, absolutely. You appeared in a documentary made by Sarah Ann Kennedy Parr about British women in animation. Now, I'm aware that there have been very few ongoing animated comedies, particularly animated sitcoms and so on, and yet you have a series of independent shorts going back several years. Can you see this turning into something more commissioned, perhaps for a television broadcast or something like that? Could you see this developing into an actual online or television series?
Well, I think Stephen and I thought it was possible at the beginning, but it didn't happen. So I'm happy just carrying on with what I'm doing. We pitched for things, and I think it was the shorts the very short shorts that were being done down there in London. but no.
Okay.
Films. You know, we were there and nobody showed an interest. So
Oh, well.
It's quite a relief, really.
Okay. Well, I mean, they have enjoyed a great deal of recognition at international animation festivals. I'm happy to say. So, yeah, that's the recognition that counts. Tom, do you have any more comments? Okay. Okay. Are you actually audible at the moment, Tom? Because oh, right. Okay. So none of those comments you will have heard, but yeah, thank you for those. Right.
Any questions?
Yeah. Are there any questions, Tom? Okay. Well, perhaps you can ask us some questions during the next screening. Something I would say is if anyone has any suggestions for events for London Animation Club in the future, I'd love to hear from you. As I say, I'm very interested in expanding it outside of Britain. So perhaps someone might have a suggestion about that. I'm also hoping to do well, I'll mention that at the end, the other idea I've had. Okay, so we're now going to watch Small Birds Singing, the original Small Birds Singing. Do you want to say anything about that?
Well, that was the first one. That was brilliant. It sort of started everything off, and it was going from scratch. We had to do things like we had to find the voices. Can I just say that Kerry Shale does all the voices? Kerry was a friend of Steve's, and we had thought, well, we'll need a different voice for each character, but
the voice is so resonant. I was going to ask, where do you get all your voice actors from? But of course,
no, it's just Kerry Shale. And when we got together, we had to write a little resume about the characters of each puppet's character, and we didn't have to say any more. Kerry just said, well, based on what you've said, I think Consomme would talk with a little bit of a lisp, and Delphinium is theatrical, and yeah.
Okay, Tracy Shaw is asking a question. Does Linda work with a team of animators, or ever worked with a team of animators, or do you work alone? Asks Tracy.
I tend to work alone. I've had a couple of people that have come and animated with me a couple of times. Judd and sorry, I've gone blank there. Molehill came and did a couple of scenes in Mother's Song. Brilliant. Brilliant working with a proper animator, because they just do it. And I think after 10 years, I'm starting to get a bit better at that sort of thing. I don't have to think about every movement. I kind of feel it now. I remember when Judd Walton was talking about animating. I think he's been animating clangers and was at Hot Animation, was a real professional. And, he said, well, you just don't think about it. It's like riding a bicycle. And I thought, gosh, to get to that stage would be great. But yeah. I would love to. I went to Cosgrove Hall and did a week's work experience there, and did a little bit on the set of Postman Pat, and I thought how wonderful to work with all these people, and then I talked to somebody from Ardman and who said, I wish I was like you and could just do my own thing. And I thought, I'm very grateful to be able to do that. So, well,
for me, it's all alchemy. It seems a magic to me.
So then, of course, with the Small Bird Singing, I also had to find musicians, and somebody put me in touch with Verbal Vigilante Music from Preston. That's Joe Steele and David Wainwright, and they were great. They came up with. I gave them selections that I liked. sort of theme tune to Big Fish, and all those sort of Nightmare Before Christmas stuff, and they came up with the sound of each puppet. So that was great. Yeah.
Wonderful. So I think we are moving towards the end, sadly, and we're going to have the final film of the evening, which is Small Birds Singing. So Tom, do you want to run VT?
How odd. It's nearly midday and still dark.
Perhaps it's the end of the world.
I see what the problem is. Open the curtains, please, Hertel.
Certainly, sir.
It's another ordinary day at Small Birds Singing. According to the local guidebook, the house is open to the public every day except Monday. Every day is Monday at Small Birds Singing. Colourful finches flutter in an aviary shaped like a globe. It is said they were once children who wandered into the garden and never wanted to return home.
Not true, not true.
When Freddie Unbelievable, the legendary stage illusionist, mysteriously vanished, Small Birds Singing was left in the care of his nephew, Spandisman, and his two sisters, Delphinium
Cheese!
and Consomme, architect of the Lover's Leap, which towers over the ornamental lake, who sadly never found a lover with whom to share the leap. Delphinium, the once beautiful victim of a tragic cosmetic surgery accident, has tried everything to restore her face.
The supernatural forces inside this pyramid will slowly make my appearance gorgeous again. 28 days.
One cycle of the moon.
And it's time to take it off. Has it worked?
Well, I'll be. I never thought anything would actually happen.
Is Spandisman chasing butterflies?
No, elephants. I'm very taken with your tiny elephants, Spandisman, but why have you bred them so small?
These elephants are just the right height to dust underneath a sideboard.
I must say they're doing an excellent job.
Yes, they suck up the dust with their trunks like tiny vacuum cleaners. The only disadvantage is the constant sneezing.
Sandy, make them be quiet! I can't hear the radio!
Meanwhile, Spaceman Thong, the living artwork, has been moved from the gallery.
Ignominy, I am a serious work of art. This is mere decoration.
Spandisman Unbelievable, inventor and scientific dilettante, has been interfering with nature again. A mechanical honeysuckle attempts to strangle all who pass along the slimy parapet. Random hedgerows shuffle about during the night, making the fickle garden an unpredictable adventure each morning. Arguing apples grow on the hybrid tree in the orchard.
Nice day.
Rubbish. Worst day ever.
Brilliant.
Awful.
No, it's super.
Worst day ever.
Brilliant.
Awful.
No, it's super.
Awful.
Tea, madam.
Thank you, Hartle.
You're a member of the secret society of masked butlers, aren't you, Hartle?
Tea, sir.
You're a successful masked crime fighter, Hartle.
Sugar, sir.
Your society summons you with a bleeper hidden in your tie, which bleats like a sheep.
Your imagination is running away with you, sir. Excuse me, sir. The port is ready to decant.
Honk, honk.
Good afternoon, Mr. Goose. I'm so relieved, Spandersman. I thought it was Mr. Goose we ate for dinner.
You must remember, Consomme, that Mr. Goose has been genetically altered to look like a man. Inside, he's still just a goose. Honk, honk.
I see what you mean.
Honk, honk, honk. What is it, Hartle?
The West Hedge, sir. They found a body.
Hidden in the West Hedge!
Do they need more clippers?
They're saying, sir, she could have been there since the late 1830s.
She's well preserved.
Ah, what a lovely afternoon.
Ah, the joy of an ordinary day at small birds singing.
Well, we've had a question from Ian, who's interested to know, Linda, when will the next film be released?
This is Ian Gardner. Yeah.
Is it Tom?
Yeah. Hi, Ian. I know you've been asking me for the last 3 years when it was going to be finished. This summer, I think, maybe. So, yeah, I'm near the end, definitely.
Okay. Well, maybe if this lockdown ever finishes, you'll come down to London and screen it with us. That's something to look forward to. Yeah, where next, Linda? What do you have another film planned after the next one, after Bob Bobbin and the Christmas Stocking?
Well, actually, Martin, I'm thinking of doing our collaboration with yourself. That's been on the spoiler since 2008.
I hang my head in shame. Yes, the Toys of Icarus, and yes, and looking at your studio and all the beautiful puppets and so on makes me think of the actual scenario of Icarus, Daedalus making toys for his son Icarus. Well, what can I say? I look forward to that, and hopefully I will have cleared the decks quite soon. Good. So sadly, we're going to have to wrap up. We'll have to wrap up now. I would like to say that Tom is offering an online DCP authoring service, which you can find out more about on Facebook or looking at his website. I have to say, as always, Tom, you've weaved your magic again. Not just transmitting, broadcasting, but also live editing. Linda, always lovely to see you. I do hope you'll come visit us in London, as I say. And thank you for the privilege of looking around your studio and seeing your creative process, and for joining us this evening. Thank you so much.
My pleasure.
Okay, I hope it was. So all I'd like to finish with is, Yeah, I thought Bob Godfrey is the kind of patron saint of London Animation Club. I found in an old interview a nice little quote, which is that animators need a place to drink so they can kind of complain about everything to each other and kind of compare notes. So in the spirit of Bob, I thought it'd be lovely to have London Animation Club Zoom party, and maybe a prize for the person who is zooming in, who's joining us from the furthest afield. So I do hope you will join us, particularly if there are any international viewers this evening. Anyway, details will go up on the Facebook page. Perhaps Tom can advise me on the lunacy or the sense of such a project. He says it sounds good. Okay, that's great. That might well be the next London Animation Club event. Details of our next more, with a guest speaker will be going up soon. As I say, this is one in a series of at home with broadcasts. So there might be another one of those next. Thank you so much, Linda, and thank you so much, Tom. And I hope to see you in the flesh very, very soon. And to all our viewers, a very good night.
Good night.